You're listening to the Vikes Verified podcast. Hello and welcome back to episode 72 of the Vikes Verified podcast. We are back in the booth after the bye and after one of the most unique games we've ever watched.
That's a nice way
A
to describe it.
3-0 victory in Las Vegas over the Raiders. Not what we expected, but we can't wait to break this one down and look at the road ahead for the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Duke Cannon, and you are going to want to go and get some of this thick body wash, some of these bars of soap. They've got quite a lineup of different products that you can plug and play for Christmas gifts, anyone in your family. Some of these guys looking for some of these products, they're not going to be disappointed, and it's right here in Minneapolis, locally based, DukeCannon.com. Go check them out.
Back in the booth after what Nick said was unique is a light way to describe that game. We watched an historic event, one of the lowest scoring games in NFL history and the lowest scoring game in an indoor stadium. So for us, very unique situation, come out with a W, but all in all, we're just happy that we came out with the win and we move on to Cincinnati. Before we get too far ahead of things, the Vikes Verified podcast is also sponsored by Unreal, a Minnesota-made company.
Yes, sir.
The founder is Michael Jordan, and I'm not talking about the Chicago Bull. He creates high-quality items. If you're looking to upgrade your apparel game, go check out Unreal at unreal.co and use code PULLTAB15 for 15% off your order.
Very nice, Matt. All right, we're going to dive into this one. So this was the highly anticipated return of star receiver Justin Jefferson. Unfortunately, Justin Jefferson, 2 catches for 27 yards, ends up catching a post route, little glance route over the middle from Josh Dobbs, forced to jump, takes a shot from Marcus Epps, and he leaves the game and is ultimately sent to the hospital for precautionary measures. Obviously, a terrible thing for Vikings fans to see at the time, and things were looking bleak after our best player went out of the game early in Vegas. Combine that with Josh Dobbs' struggles, and we saw a historically bad offensive performance from this Vikings team. But ultimately, Nick Mullens, who was named the starter this week, was able to put a drive together, get us that one field goal on the board, and this defense put one of the most memorable experiences and performances on this field that I can remember in Vikings history. This team played lights out. Josh Metellus and Ivan Pace anchored us. We're able to sneak out a 3-0 win. Like you said, lowest scoring indoor game in NFL history. That is some history for a team that used to play outside at the Met down in Bloomington, and we went back to our roots a little bit with a 3-0 game in Vegas.
Yeah, chalk that one up. Quite historic. Was definitely not the best game to watch or more enticing game, but nonetheless, we're able to get a win on the road in Las Vegas off the bye week, which is massive. Now, what I think is most interesting is that coming into the season, the Vikings were viewed as an offensive-heavy team and, needed to fix the defense, and that was considered kind of our weakness. Now, in going into Week 15 of this NFL season, the defense has become the strong suit of this Vikings team and has been something that we had to lean on these last few weeks. And it really just goes to show the job that Brian Flores has done and what he's been able to do with some of these unheralded guys and then turn them into bona fide starters for this defense. Can't say enough about Flores and the job that he's done, but overall, what a turn of events into what this team was thought to be into what we are now going into Week 15.
All right, look at this, Matt. Haven't allowed a touchdown since when? November 11th. That's over a month. The Minnesota Vikings have not allowed a touchdown. So we're going to talk about Brian Flores and what he's been able to do with this personnel. You look at the personnel of this defense, Matt, and outside of Danielle Hunter and Harrison Smith, there really isn't a blue-chip player, a highly drafted player, highly sought-after player. He's taking guys that are mid- to late-round picks, some undrafted, and Ivan Pace, and piecing together a unit that simply can't be stopped and a unit that opposing quarterbacks cannot figure out pre or post snap. Anthony Barr said it great this week. He said some of the things that Brian Flores draws up on paper simply do not make sense until you get out there and actually run it. So I think, this is a prime example of defensive innovation. If you ask me, this is something that the NFL really hasn't seen before. And I think that is a very beneficial thing for Brian Flores right now, with teams not being able to hardly scheme against it because, it's not a defense that's shown every Sunday, week in and week out.
Yeah, I mean, but just look at the guys that he's really been able to highlight in this defense. The extension of Josh Metellus now looks like a very smart move by that front
Very
office.
smart.
2 years, $8 million. That's a steal for the numbers that he's putting up. For those of you who did not see the graphic last Sunday, he has played basically every defensive position you can play on the defensive side, and he's done it all. So he's the Swiss Army knife of this defense, and has become a should-be Pro Bowler now in his second or third season in the NFL. What a transformation he's had. And then you look at Ivan Pace and DJ Wanham and Sheldon Day, all of these unheralded guys that have come and make impacts for this defense. I think the scheme allows for the athletic side of these players to shine and kind of stand out, and we're seeing the results of that. And just allowing them to play more free has, in turn, made this defense a lot more free-flowing and a lot more physical now. I mean, this defense, compared to last season, is a complete 180, and I couldn't be happier to see what we have now on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, I think you nailed that right on the head, Matt. I couldn't explain it any better myself. Free-flowing and just seeing a unit of 11 players kind of play without thinking, if you will. These guys are playing full speed. They're wrapping up ball carriers. We're one of the best tackling units in the league as well. We've got some perimeter players playing at a very high level as well. Byron Murphy doing a terrific job. Caleb Evans remains extremely physical on the perimeter. Cam Bynum stepping into a borderline Pro Bowl position himself too. So, and then we can't forget about the Hall of Famer Harrison Smith. But it's been remarkable, and this defense is going to have to be leaned on moving forward. We got the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Nick Mullens named the starter in this one. Talking about Josh Dobbs, seemed to have kind of run out of steam, kind of like a Jeremy Lin, Lin sanity moment. He went nuts for a few weeks. It's pretty imperative that he was better when he didn't really know the playbook and he was forced to improvise, use his instincts. It seems that the Bears and this last game against the Raiders, defensive coordinators were able to take away those outside escape lanes for him, so he wasn't able to spin out of the pocket. Really struggled to get away from any edge rushers. It doesn't help when you're going up against a guy in Max Crosby. Tremendous talent and athleticism there. But ultimately, Dobbs not able to push the ball downfield, not able to complete many passes, and just didn't look comfortable overall. So I'm glad we made the decision when we did in the fourth quarter. That's a tough one to make as a head coach, when you put trust in a guy to start and finish a game, and then you got to dip into the second-string quarterback. But I think he made the right decision there, and it clearly was, because we end up winning the game with Nick Mullens. Now, what do you see in Nick Mullens and what he's able to do in this offense as opposed to what Dobbs wasn't able to do the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a downgrade in athleticism and kind of, the ability to escape the pocket, maybe more on the run type plays. But he's going to be much more effective in the pocket and running a more nuanced offense that's going to be more off timing and, certain schemes that he's also more familiar with this offense than Dobbs too. So I think you pair the ability to run a little bit more in-depth offense that Kevin O'Connell's used to running with an in-pocket quarterback. Also, his knowledge of the playbook. I think you're going to see, it might not be as flashy, but we're going to see a little bit more of a consistent offensive production, I think, this Saturday in Cincinnati. Like we said, it's not going to be a bunch of fireworks. It's not going to be him escaping the pocket for 30 yards and a touchdown. It's going to be running, simple route trees, Kevin O'Connell is going to scheme a lot of play action into this to try to really get that run game going as well. You're going to see a little bit more of a pocket passer, but that's what we're really used to, when we have a guy like Kirk Cousins, who's our normal starter. So Mullens is a little bit, I think it's easier for us to say, is that Mullens is probably the closest thing to Kirk Cousins in that QB room that we have left. And I think that's where Kevin O'Connell has to go after the end of that game. Mullens being able to lead us down to at least get 3 points. There wasn't really another way for you to go outside of starting Mullens again and giving him a chance in Cincinnati. So hats off to Nick. I think he did a great job waiting for his opportunity and then capitalizing on it. And now comes his biggest opportunity since his days in San Fran. He has a chance to not only win a game in Cincinnati, but really take the reins in that QB position throughout the rest of the season, because after Cincinnati is when the real games, I think, really start with all NFC North matchups to finish the season, and we have to have some confidence at that position going into that stretch.
Yeah, you're totally right, Matt. And what an opportunity. It does fire me up to even think about it. But what I liked from Nick Mullens in this one, I think Mark Sanchez said it great on the broadcast. He was cool as a cucumber back there. He's a guy that's really good at keeping his composure regardless of what's going on around him. There's times where Josh Dobbs certainly seemed rattled, and you can kind of tell by his body language and his demeanor at times when he's thrown out of a rhythm. I think Mullens brings, a little bit more of a veteran cooling presence to the offense. He did a good job pushing the ball to the first down marker over the middle of the field. He is pushing it downfield, not afraid to make big throws. You saw that tip to Hawkinson, probably a little bit of luck there, but you know what? He's throwing the ball downfield. It's not something we saw a ton of confidently from Dobbs. So, you look at the likes of Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford and now Nick Mullens, and how you can kind of call an offense that Kevin O'Connell is more used to calling, like you said, and it's built off timing. Receivers are going to be able to go back to, the way that they were running routes when Kirk was in. Nick was supposed to be the guy when Kirk went down in Green Bay. We can't forget that. So, what's the point of signing a mid to high level backup if he's not going to get an opportunity? So I think this is the right thing to do for sure. I'm excited to see how he commands this offense. Looking at our run game, you talk about how that's going to be very important. We saw Alexander Mattison kind of rumble a little bit in this game. 10 carries for 66 yards. We were impressed at some of his second efforts and the way he was able to move the chains for us. Goes down with a sprained ankle. You're looking at the room now. Ty Chandler probably going to get his first start this weekend for the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe Alexander plays. He did not practice today, but Ty Chandler and Kene Nwangwu, what is your confidence in that running back room? We saw one carry from C.J. Ham as well for 8 yards, which we've been calling for all year. I would not be surprised to see him in the mix in power back situations.
Yeah, definitely. I think in power back situations, he can definitely get a rep or two there, or I should say carry. But
I'd say 3 or 5
maybe,
at least.
Give him. He's shown 8 yards. Hey, I'll take that all day. If he can do that on a consistent basis, put him in the running back position all day. But
damn right.
If you're talking about Ty Chandler and Kene, confidence level not very high, but I do like the unknown. I think that the athletic side of things, these are the probably 2 most athletic running backs in that running back room. Ty Chandler finally gets a chance to break open for everyone who's wanted to see more of him and what he can do. He's finally going to get that opportunity in Cincinnati, as it looks like Madison may not be able to suit up for that game. And then Kene, too. He's been kind of a forgotten running back in that whole situation there with his injury at the beginning of the season. He's really kind of gotten tossed under the rug. And another opportunity for this guy to go make a name for himself, whether it's in a third down role or maybe a 50-50 split backfield. He's going to have an opportunity to show what he can do. And I think, for him specifically, he's got probably a little bit more pressure than a guy in Ty Chandler to put it on tape, just because he's known as being more of a kick returner. And with the return game taking a step back this year, I think he needs to show what he can do as a running back so that he can show to increase his overall value for when his contract does run out in Minnesota. But again, I think there's a lot of athleticism there. Going into Cincinnati, we're going to see probably a little bit more of pitches, zone runs, different things that are going to give him a little bit more room to wiggle than a guy like Alex Madison, who you're going to let run between the tackles and let him do his thing. Before we get dove into the Cincinnati game, I think that there was not a lot of highlights from this Las Vegas game, but if there had to be one that I could pick out, I thought the celebration after Ivan Pace's touchdown, or was it after Pace's touchdown?
No, it was not. It was after Metellis's
my mistake. After Metellis's punch out, Najee Thompson continues his elite run of celebration, and they pull out the keg stand. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but
a couple days after Wes Phillips' DUI as well. It's, right on brand with what's going on within the team.
Well played, Najee. Well played. He continues to kill it, and that, to me, was the best highlight from that snooze fest of a game at Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout-out to, as long as we're talking about great performances, I want to give a shout-out to Dalton Reisner on that offensive line, and we saw a couple offensive linemen drop here in this one. Obviously, Ed Ingram did not go. Brian O'Neill with a sprained ankle. Dalton Reisner rolled an ankle as well. Came out of the game for a bit, was able to battle it out, show some grit, go back in the game. 44 pass blocking snaps for Reisner, 1 pressure allowed, 0 sacks allowed. It was a gritty performance from him when we absolutely needed him on the interior there. So shout out to Dalton. All right, we're going to talk a little bit NFC North here, Matt. Detroit Lions, what was supposed to be their breakout season, contending for a Super Bowl. All of a sudden, they aren't getting the quarterback play from Jared Goff that they were at the beginning of the season. And you see them drop another one. They play the Denver Broncos this week, who's no slouch of a team. And then they go into us twice in the last 3 games. So
Plus the
I think,
Cowboys.
if Nick Mullens is able to get it together and command an offense, a respectable and reputable offense for us, winning the division is not out of the question for the Minnesota Vikings, and that's something exciting as we sit here at 7-6, fresh off a Packers loss as well. Shout out to Tommy DeVito. Great performance from Tommy there. But
Cutlets.
yeah, you got to love that, seeing the Packers go down on Monday Night Football. But there's opportunity for us to come in and steal this division. I think this game on Christmas Eve here is going to have some huge implications. Can't wait to see what that brings.
Yeah, I mean, this division race has totally tightened up from the beginning of the season. The Lions have came back down to reality and just lost to the Bears and have seemed to shown some flaws in their game from what was considered, a top 2-3 team in the NFC. Now we really control the division race when it comes to the NFC North with those 3 games remaining, 2 games against Detroit, 1 against the Packers. Everything is in our hands. If we want to go win it, we need to win those 3 games, and the division's ours. Now, I will bring up an interesting scenario. If we were able to beat the Bengals and the Packers and the Lions lose to the Broncos and Cowboys, we would only need to beat the Lions once to secure the division. So the scenarios have definitely gone in our favor. And honestly, I think there's a good point to be made about which team I'm more concerned about for the rest of the season, if that's Detroit Lions or Green Bay Packers. I think that these last 3 games are going to be monumental, but the route to getting to win the North has become a little bit more realistic, and I don't think it's that crazy to think that we can do it.
No, I think it's a cool thing to think about, and I'm just excited to even sit up here and talk about that opportunity, because what we saw from the Detroit Lions at the beginning of the season, it was kind of looking like a one-horse race for a while there. But here we are, and we're in the tail end of the season, but it's the home stretch now, and these next 4 are very, very important. The Cincinnati Bengals are a team with former Viking Jake Browning at the helm.
Revenge
Joe
game.
Burrow out for the season. They're kind of piecing things together and finding ways to win football games as well. Jake Browning has kind of turned out to be a more serviceable quarterback than a lot of people thought. They're getting some good production from Joe Mixon. They have 2, premier threats on the outside, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And they're finding a screen game with Chase Brown, too, another rookie. They're finding explosive plays, and I think it's going to be a major test for any young quarterback to come in and play, the defensive looks that Brian Flores will give you. And we saw that with Aiden O'Connell. Specifically on the last play, game-sealing pick from Ivan Pace. He saw him there. He just threw it right into his lap. He's so confused about where everyone is pre-snap. Hopefully Brian is able to do more of the same in this one. What do you see from Cincinnati that kind of perks your ears up a little bit about their team?
Well, it's the wide receiving core. You talk about Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and then you toss in a running back and Joe Mixon. They have a lot of weapons, and that offense does not lack any firepower. And Jake Browning, his first week as starter, he was a little up and down, but his last 2 weeks he's actually shown a lot more confidence and ability to get the ball downfield. And when you have playmakers like that, you don't need to do too much. You just need to do enough to keep that offense moving, keep the chains going, and ultimately putting points on the scoreboard. They were able to put up 34 on the Indianapolis Colts last week. So this is no team to be looked over. The defensive side of things, I don't think that's their strong suit, but they've still got some good players. Eli Apple, I believe, still might be playing with them. I think
I sure hope so.
They have Reeder. They have a couple other guys on defense, but again, their defensive side of things is
Logan
not
Wilson's a nice player.
Expertise, you could say. So this team on the road is going to be very difficult. They are also in a similar situation to us, so they're going to be playing a very gritty game. This means a lot for the rest of this playoff picture for both sides. So I expect a very heated matchup and a close one, as we all should expect with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, this wild card spot. Us sitting in 6th right now. Packers at 6-7 in the 7 spot. We've got the Rams at 6-7 as well after losing a heartbreaker to the Baltimore Ravens. Shout out to Baltimore as well. And then we got the Seahawks 6-7 and the Falcons. So, and the Saints as well, all at 6-7. We got to remember that one of those is going to be the division winner. It's the Buccaneers with the current lead of that division in the NFC South. But this NFC playoff race is going to be fireworks down the stretch.
Yeah.
And what a blessing it is for us to be able to control our own destiny and have this game lead over these teams. It starts this week in Cincinnati, no doubt. Let's get into Week 14 around the league, presented by Duke Cannon, Matt. I'm going to start with Thursday Night Football. We've got the apparently already fired Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Bailey Zappi goes in and gets the W 21-18 over the struggling Pittsburgh Steelers.
Zach Wilson was back in the starting position and took the Jets all the way to the top with a victory with a final score of 30-6 over the Houston Texans.
And an OT thriller in the rain. Tylan Wallace could go all the way for the Baltimore Ravens. 37-31. They stun the Rams in OT.
And in New Orleans, the Saints came away with a victory over the measly Carolina Panthers with a final score of 28-6 Saints.
Measly. All right. And the Cincinnati Bengals, 34-14 over the Indianapolis Colts with a confident performance from Jake Browning. He is starting to find his stride.
And you could say things were baking up in Tampa Bay, where Tampa Bay was able to sneak away with a win over the Falcons with a final score of 29-25.
And the Cleveland Browns, led by 38-year-old vet Joe Flacco, finding the fountain of youth, 31-27 over the Jacksonville Jaguars.
An NFC North matchup in Chicago led to an upset of the Detroit Lions, with the Chicago Bears going on a 2-game win streak and finishing with a final score of 28-13.
And the NFL's biggest juggernaut at the moment and the first team to clinch a playoff spot, the San Francisco 49ers, take it to the Seattle Seahawks and an emotionally unstable DK Metcalf, 28-16.
In the most historic game of the week, your Minnesota Vikings took on the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas and were able to squeak out a victory with a final score of 3-0.
And Russ continues to cook a little bit. LA Chargers lose Justin Herbert for the season. They drop this one 24-7 over to the Denver Broncos. Look at Brandon Staley. His seat has never been hotter. Waiting for that news every week now.
And moving to Kansas City, we had the Kansas City Chiefs and Travis Kelce throwing fits after that play got called back. Never happened. Ended up resulting in a loss, and the Buffalo Bills get a critical win in Arrowhead with a final score of 20-17.
And another team firing on all cylinders, the Dallas Cowboys. I won't believe it until they do it in the playoffs, but they certainly are doing it in the regular season right now. 33-13 over the Philadelphia Eagles.
I hope you like cutlets, because Tommy DeVito and the New York Giants did us a big favor and beat the Green Bay Giants with a score of 24-22.
The Green Bay Giants.
Can't get enough.
All right, and 28-27 for Will Levis, squeaking out an OT victory over the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill banged up in this one, was able to come back in the game, but it just simply was not enough. And that is Week 14 around the league, presented by Duke Cannon, Matt. I want to talk a little bit about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, obviously coveted college teammates at LSU, won the national championship there. Do you think there's a little bit of extra incentive for Justin to go this weekend, playing against his former counterpart at LSU, Jamar Chase?
100%. I think he's had this game circled on the schedule since the beginning of the year. Obviously, there's been a huge debate about who's the better receiver, who's this, who's that. Let's just get things straight. They're both great receivers. If I had to pick one, I'd be picking Jefferson, biased or not biased. Regardless, that's my answer there. But if you were to ask Justin Jefferson if he was not going to play in this game, I think you'd have to have a damn good reason to keep him out, because even if he's a little bit hampered and still feels like he's going to play, he's going to suit up. He wants to show what he can do, and he wants to do it against one of his good friends, Jamar Chase. And I think you're going to see that on Saturday.
100%. I think it helps bring out the competitor in both of them for sure. This is a team that's very resilient right now. The Cincinnati Bengals, I think they're well coached with Zach Taylor as well, but they're finding ways to win. And, when Jake Browning came into the fold, a lot of people were thinking, this is let's pack it up and wait for next year Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow's healthy. But this is a roster that's kind of saying the opposite. And they're saying, we're going to do our best to compete here. They know the challenge that our defense is going to bring them, but they also know that we are going through a QB carousel of our own. So I think if Nick Mullens is able to match the play or play better, a little bit better than Jake Browning in this one, I think our defense is certainly good enough to take this game as a win for sure.
Yeah, I think, you just need matching play. You don't need even
exactly matching play. I think our defense has the upper hand. We're able to create a turnover or two. It'd be fun to see another defensive touchdown at some point here. But, if Nick Mullens can simply just go, throw for throw with Jake Browning, and we're able to establish somewhat of a run game, winning this game would do wonders for our playoff chances as well, putting us at 8-6. We would probably be somewhere in the 75 to 80% range to make it at that point. And that would only force us to have to win one of the last 3 games probably to get in, rather than having to win 2 out of 3 or even all 3. So this, I think, is the most pivotal game maybe of the season going into these last 3, because it sets a tone for how we approach Lions twice and Packers once down the stretch.
Yeah, and just a little promo here while we're talking about this Cincy game. Biggest game of the year. If you are in town in the Minneapolis area, we are actually hosting a watch party at Tom's Watch Bar in downtown Minneapolis. Very central location. Best viewing experience you can find in the Twin Cities. Come check us out at Tom's at Saturday at 11 to 4. We're going to be out there all day doing giveaways, getting hyped with Vikings fans, and hopefully securing a Vikings W as we continue this journey into the playoffs.
100%. We're going to have plenty of unreal merchandise, Duke Cannon, Jimmy's Dressings and Dips, Pull Tab Sports, you name it. We're going to be giving all this stuff away. So if you're in Minneapolis, feel free to pop by, say what's up, check out what's for sale, and just enjoy a good atmosphere and a great game. So it's going to be a great time. Last year we were lucky enough to have the Buffalo Bills game for our watch party, hoping we can match a similar energy this season.
Browning versus Mullens. You couldn't ask for a better QB matchup, but let's not forget about Chase and Jefferson.
You got to look at the success of backup quarterbacks in the NFL this season. You look top to bottom, there's a ton of guys getting it done who are not the familiar suspects, and I think, anywhere from Bailey Zappi to Tommy DeVito, these guys coming out of the woodwork, sometimes all it takes is an opportunity for a guy, and they're able to elevate their game to the highest level of play, and we're certainly hoping that's the case with Nick Mullens here. What do you think is holding our coaching staff, our front office back from wanting to see Jaren Hall under center? Obviously, we saw that promising drive in Atlanta. He gets knocked out with a kind of a scary concussion there. Do you think that injury has anything to do with him not getting the nod this week? Or there's a lot of Vikings fans calling for Jaren Hall. I'm on the Mullens train personally. I think he gives us the best chance to win right now. But what do you think they see in Jaren Hall that's not allowing them to give him the green light?
Well, the first thing is the situation was different the last time that Jaren Hall started. Nick Mullens was still recovering from that back injury, probably wasn't healthy enough for the team to feel confident for him to start a football game and, be able to operate at the level that they expect him to. So let's not forget about that. I think that's a huge factor into why Hall got that start against Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the situation now, the team is fighting for a playoff spot. We need every win possible. As much as we want to see what we have in Hall, it's kind of a locker room thing. If you go with Mullens, I think it gives a little bit more of a vote of confidence into the team of, hey, we're gonna put this guy out there. He might not be our rookie, but he probably gives us a little better chance to win ball games. And we know you guys have put in so much effort this year that we're not gonna hence throw in a rookie quarterback just to see what he has. They're going to at least go for these wins and chase it as a team, not just look at it as a single position. Now, that's not saying that's the right or wrong answer. I'm just saying I think that's how you kind of have to look at it with them siding with Mullens over Hall. I do wish that we would be able to see what we have with Hall, but again, there's still 3 games left from the season. If Mullens was to have a bad game in Cincinnati, I think the conversation for Jaren definitely opens up. But let's not jump too far ahead of things. Mullens was able to come in late in the game, get us what we needed to get out of there with the win. Let's see what he can do with the full game before we cast judgment on a guy who's shown that he can jump into, spurts of games and be a very effective quarterback in the NFL. So I think they're at least going to give him a full game to show what he can do before they hand the reins over to a rookie and hope that he can carry this, veteran-laden team on such a deep run.
100%. Mullens has done it before. I mean, this is a guy with a ton of experience. He's a Thursday night football hero in San Francisco. Broke Brett Favre's passing records at Southern Miss. Was kind of mentored by him in terms of how to play the quarterback position as well. So, I mean, this is a guy that's done it before, and I think that has been kind of chomping at the bit for this opportunity. I mean, I can't imagine what he was feeling when Kirk went down and he wasn't available. You know, he's the guy who went through training camp, went through OTAs as the backup. You know, I'm going to be ready if Kirk goes down. He's out, and now Mullens is not able to come in. I would imagine that was a pretty trying time for Nick not to be able to get that opportunity, but here it is now right in front of his face, and I'm excited to see what he can do with it. You know, made a handful of clutch throws that I can remember in this last game that throw over the cover 2 corner to KJ Osborne on the sidelines there to move the chains, throw to Addison on the sidelines to put us in field goal range. I mean, he stepped up, and he's certainly not scared to push the ball downfield, and I think that's something that, you know, when you have a playmaking group like we have, give guys opportunities. That's pretty much all we want to see, because we have receivers that can win 50-50 balls. We have receivers that can win running routes. I want a quarterback who's going to pull the trigger with a quick release and stand in the pocket and deliver, and I think Nick Mullens gives us the best chance to do that.
If Nick Mullens can go into Cincinnati and get a W for us on the road, what do you think are some of the keys to the game for us to secure a W in Cincinnati?
So I got 2 of them. So my 2 keys are going to be, you know, we talk about establishing the run game every week. I'm going to leave that for you to talk about probably. My first one is going to be Nick Mullens over 60% completion percentage. I think if he's able to develop confidence early in the game, we get him in on the screen game. We throw some short, quick game, slants, outs. Then you're able to take some shots over the top maybe with play action. If Mullens completes over 60% of his passes in this game, I like our chances to win. Simple as that. He's dealing with confidence at that point, and he's able to move the ball downfield for us. My second key to the game is going to be a game-changing special teams play. Now, what I mean by a game-changing special teams play would be a kick return touchdown, a punt return touchdown, or a forced fumble on either one of those units as well. A turnover or a touchdown on special teams. I think that is the type of play that heavily sways the odds of winning in one team's favor.
Yeah, that ties into my first key to the game, and that's create 2+ turnovers. It's not even as much of winning the turnover battle, but we're going to need a couple extra possessions, I think, on the road for a guy like Nick Mullens. This defense was able to create 3 turnovers in Las Vegas, which ended up being super critical, especially that one in our zone where Metellus was able to punch that ball out and prevent a field goal for the Raiders. So I think that's going to be my biggest key, is finding a way to turn the ball over multiple times. The second one would be convert in the red zone. This team needs to score touchdowns, not field goals. I don't think we're going to beat the Bengals by having Greg Joseph kick in 3 or 4 field goals. I think we're going to beat the Bengals by scoring 3 or 4 touchdowns. Now, I think that's obviously been one of our critiques with Kevin O'Connell and this Vikings offense has been inside the 20. So I think what a great opportunity to not only help strengthen that area, but really put points on the board so that the defense, you know, you can let them do their thing. It doesn't always have to be a constant 3-0, 7-0 battle. Let's give them a little bit of wiggle room and, you know, let those juices flow on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, throwing a third key in there myself. CJ Ham, 5+ carries. Give it to him.
Okay.
Let him operate. Been talking about it in the red zone, but to see him get the call at midfield or whatever that was there and take that for 8 yards, I think that's all you need to see on film as an offensive staff and say, you know, why don't we mix this guy in? He's a change of pace. He's a power back, especially if you're going with Ty Chandler and Kene Nwangwu, more finesse, you know, lightning guys. You got to have that downhill presence, and I think CJ absolutely brings that. He is absolutely fiending for a bigger role on offense, and he deserves it. He can make plays, he can catch the football, and he's secure with it as well. So let's get into your score prediction, Matt. What do you see as a final outcome in this game?
All right, we are back to the score predictions. It's been a couple weeks in a row of me siding with the Vikings. I was wrong, you know, on a couple of them with the Broncos and Bears, but I'm going to stick with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that they go into Cincinnati, find a way to squeak out a W on the road, and help continue their journey into these final 3 games against our NFC North foes. I'm going to go with the final score of your Minnesota Vikings 27, Cincinnati Bengals 24.
I've got Vikings 21-18 over the Bengals is what I got. I think they get an opportunity, you know, maybe to get a game-tying field goal at the end. I think Brian Flores and this defense shuts it down. I think we see a game-managing masterclass from Nick Mullens in this one. What do I mean by that? I mean commanding the huddle, running good play-action fakes, and completing a high percentage of your passes, not turning the football over. That's what a game-managing masterclass is, and time of possession is going to be critical in this game as well. They've got a couple good backs that are running at a high level, Joe Mixon and Chase Brown. we got to match that on the ground game and control the clock, control possession of the game, and, find a way to take the life out of that Cincinnati crowd. Looking forward to this game. Like I said, here in the Minneapolis area, stop by Tom's. We'd love to meet each and every one of you. If you're looking for something to do for the game, it should be a good atmosphere. Let's see how this shakes out this weekend, and I really want to be sitting here 1 week from now talking about our matchup with the Lions and how we could potentially steal the division from the Motor City Kitties.
Yeah, let's keep this train rolling. Pop out to Tom's if you're in town. If not, keep cheering from the couch, wherever that may be. Let's keep those vibes up. Let's see if we can keep the W's coming and hopefully secure one on the road in Cincinnati for a big road dub.
Let's go. SKOL Vikings. This is the Vikes Verified Podcast.
SKOL.
You're listening to the Vikes Verified Podcast.